And I know I'm painting with a broad brush, and I don't intend to offend anybody, but I just think that there are a lot of us collectively that overestimate our skill level when it comes to dealing with an unexpected emergency. And let's face it, if it's an emergency, it's unexpected.
Pat, this is not a happy video, I'm sorry to say, but it is a very, very important video. And ironically, it references another video, one that just came out from the Air Safety Institute that references an NTSB final report on a crash that happened 2 years ago. It was a Cessna Cardinal that was departing an airport in New York, had a problem and came back, and unfortunately didn't work out, and it was a double fatality. And one of those people was a good friend of ours, Richard McSpadden.
Yeah. Uh, you know, I remember vividly, literally like it was yesterday. I got a phone call. It was our boss, you and I, our boss.
Yep.
And I wondered to myself, what's he call? If I remember, it was a Sunday afternoon,
Yes, it was.
and I thought, what's he calling me for on a Sunday afternoon? And anyway, I answered the telephone, and he gave me the news. He said, there was I wanted you to hear this from me. There was an accident, and Richard was involved, and sadly he didn't make it. And like I said, I remember it like it was yesterday, and I was speechless. I mean, literally speechless. And well, how, what, why? This is Richard McSpadden, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
He's a Thunderbird, and all of the other things that he had done in an amazing career. And oh my gosh.
Well, I had a similar reaction. It was a very hard day because I liked Richard a lot. I had enormous respect for him. He was a genuinely nice guy. But this video is not about us dissecting the accident. This
True.
video is about us pointing out, and I will put in the show notes a link to the final report, to the ASI video, which is excellent, that Mike Ginter from ASI does a rundown of what the accident report tells us. And I'll include a link to a video that ASI did, I believe it's a couple of years ago now, about the impossible turn, because that's critical to this particular accident and how important it is to learn how to do that correctly. So we'll get into all that. But, I mentioned to you earlier, this is one of those final reports. I really do think it's worth people clicking on that link, downloading the PDF, and taking a look, if for no other reason than at the end, there's a section that says, what can you do? Specifically, how can you avoid this type of accident? Because it does happen, Pat, and I hate to say it, but it probably shouldn't.
Yeah, I don't want to get into dissecting the NTSB report either. There are a number of YouTube channels out there with folks that do that. Some much better than others. And when you and I put this channel together, it was not our intent to be, I don't know, for lack of a better way to put it, an accident, ambulance chaser type of a channel. So yeah, I don't want to do that. But ASI's video is extraordinary. It's incredibly good, and it summarizes those things that you mentioned yourself, Jamie. The things that you can do to hopefully to avoid the same fate. You know, it looks like basically. I mean, it looks like what the NTSB was showing, and what the video shows is that it looks like the impossible turn, so-called impossible turn, was attempted. We'll never know for sure who attempted it. As it said in the video, the pre-flight briefing was that the owner of the airplane would do the takeoff and the landing. Richard would do the formation flying. So, I guess it would be safe to assume that the owner was actually flying the airplane. But to go back to and I'm sorry I'm having some trouble articulating
No,
because
I
this
get it
is
entirely. I get it entirely. This is a difficult topic because it does touch us. And for those who have never experienced this, I mean, we both have long careers. We've both lost a friend or two.
yeah.
And this is a classic opportunity to discuss emergency preparedness. How do you deal with an emergency when it happens? And I've had 3 engine failures in my life. I didn't like any of them, but I walked away without bending metal. And I'm kind of pleased about that. Let's talk about that emergency preparedness. How do we keep ourselves from getting in that situation if possible? And if we do get in that position, what are our options? We talked a little bit before we turned on the camera here. Both of us have practiced the impossible turn ourselves and with students, but we don't do it close to the ground. You want to explain how you do it?
Well, the way I teach it, and it's not just me. I mean, anybody that teaches the impossible turn probably does it in a similar way. First of all, we start at a safe altitude. For me, it's 1,000 feet AGL, and that becomes the hard deck. And I'll have the student initiate a normal climb at VY or VX or somewhere in between, whatever speed they normally climb at, because we want to simulate whatever is normal for that particular person in that particular airplane. And at say 2,000 feet AGL, I'll reach up and I'll ease the throttle back. We're not going to damage the airplane or by shock cooling the engine or anything like that, but we'll ease the throttle back to idle. And I'll instruct them, hold this pitch attitude for 3 to 5 seconds, because you know as well as I do, Jamie, we've both had excitement, that there's a few seconds there where your thoughts are, this can't possibly be happening to me. This is really just a bad dream.
That's exactly it. Every time it's happened to me, there's 3 to 5 seconds where I'm like, "This is not real. This is not happening." And it
Yeah,
is.
and it is, and you have to deal with it. So that 3 to 5 seconds, maintaining that pitch, that initial pitch, is a really good simulation of how quickly the airspeed can decay and how quickly you have to be willing and ready to push the airplane over to best glide. Now, I'm painting with the broad brush here, but in very general terms, best glide and best rate are about within a few knots of each other, usually within a few knots of each other. Check your airplane and to make sure that this applies to your airplane, but it's at least a rule of thumb you could start with. So you immediately pitch over. If you happen to have taken note of which way the wind is blowing, you want to turn into the wind. And it's going to be a 45-degree bank angle. There was a study, I think, by the Navy several years ago, and they looked at 30-degree bank angle and a 45-degree bank angle. Jamie, I'm embarrassed to tell you, I can't remember what the results of that were, but a 45-degree bank angle will get you back around quicker.
Well, rate of turn is a big deal at that point, and I must stress when we talk about reducing the angle of attack, it's an aggressive reducing the angle of attack. It's not a gentle maneuver because we're nose high. Now we lost power and we're losing speed. We got to get that nose down. So it's a good push.
Yeah.
And it's worth remembering as you talk about that 30-degree or 45-degree bank angle. And I go for the 45-degree because getting that rate of turn up is a big deal. I need to get around. And by the way, if I've reduced the angle of attack aggressively, you can't stall if the wing's not holding weight up.
That's true, but that brings up the next hazard, and that is trying to fly what you might call a normal glide speed that you would do if you had an engine out in wings level
Mhm.
situation. So you're going to have to increase your speed a little bit to avoid
Sure.
overloading the wings and stalling the airplane. That's what makes this maneuver so potentially fatal.
Well, and because of that bank angle, not to interrupt you, but where I was going with that is because of that bank angle, the airspeed marked on your airspeed indicator for stalls is not pertinent anymore. That's based on straight and level, 1G situation. You're now in a 45-degree bank, even though you're headed downhill, hopefully, your stall speed has escalated because of that bank. You slopped a bunch of vertical lift for horizontal.
Yeah.
This is why you've got to practice it, because it's not going to work the first time.
Yeah.
Shouldn't say it's not. It's probably not.
Probably not. So you've pushed the nose over. You've unloaded the wings. You've made your bank. Tried to unload the wings by increasing your speed and which of course increases your rate of descent. But it's not just a 180-degree turn. All that does is get you headed back in the general direction of the airport. And the reason that I said earlier, if you have taken note the direction of the wind and turned into the wind, assuming there's a crosswind, you can use that wind to help push you back and get you lined up with the runway. But in order to at least somewhat simulate the amount of altitude that you're going to lose as you try to maneuver back to lining up with the runway, you want to continue that turn. So let's just say for grins, so we've got some numbers we can attach to this. Let's say for grins, you start out on a 360 heading and you make a left-hand turn. So, you turn around to 180 degrees, but that's not far enough. You got to continue going around to 90. So it's basically a 270-degree turn.
Very often, when you look at the ground track of an airplane that does this, it looks like a question mark.
Yes.
It's not out and back. It's a big loop,
Yeah.
and that's why that bank angle and getting the glide speed together, unloading that airplane quickly is such a big deal. And I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm just
No, no, no. That's all right. There's so much to unpack here that and we're trying to do it in a reasonably short period of time, and it makes it tough. So, my experience in teaching this maneuver, and in a variety of airplanes, but for the purpose of our conversation, let's talk about 172s and 182s and Archers and Warriors and Grumman Tigers. Done it in Grumman Tigers before.
Mhm.
Basically, your single engine fixed pitch, 4 to 6 cylinder engine airplane. Um, um, if the pilot's lucky, they'll lose about 800 or 900 feet on that first attempt. Um, repeated repeated efforts, I have had them get it down to as little as 400 feet. But you have to remember, Jamie, they've practiced it 4, 5, 6 times, 7 times, whatever the number is. They're expecting it, and
Right.
those are the two caveats. Yeah, the first time was 800, so it's a 100% or a 50% improvement, however you want to do the math. But they're expecting it, and they've practiced it over and over and over again, and it's fresh.
That's pivotal to the story of Sully Sullenberger and the Miracle on the Hudson. The people doing it in the sim who knew it's coming, I'm not in any danger, I'm in a sim, they could get back to the airport because they could react instantly knowing what the problem was. But you talked about that 3 to 5 seconds. If I've got to analyze this situation, it's gotten dramatically worse in that time. And if I don't know the amount of space it's going to take me to get back, and I initiate that at 350 AGL, it's just not going to work out. Plus, there may be obstacles. There may be trees or buildings or something in the way. So all of that matters. And if I'm used to flying this airplane and I'm very confident in it, but I show up that day and that one's in maintenance, so I take this one, it might be the same model, it might be the same year. It's going to be slightly different in how it reacts because it's got chipped paint or bigger tires or something about it. You've got to really be aware. It's partially your familiarity and proficiency with doing the maneuver. It's partially what airplane are you in. A Cub and a Bonanza are going to be very different in this situation. So you have to be cognizant of that.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up an excellent point. Um, as you know, I do a lot of check rides, and I would say 99.9% of them for sure, on the pre-flight, on the pre-takeoff briefing, you get the standard thing that they're all taught to parrot, And that is, if the engine fails on the runway, we'll throttle back to idle, apply the brakes, and exit the runway as quick as possible. If the engine fails shortly after takeoff, we'll land on any remaining runway that's still available. If the engine quits at 500 feet, we'll land straight ahead, 30 degrees either side of the nose, and try not to hit anything. If it's 1,000 feet or so, we'll assess the situation and turn back to the airport. And I have heard that so many times that it has almost become a standard debrief item, because while that may be true on a Cessna 152 or a Cessna 172 or an Archer or a Warrior, it is most certainly not true on a Bonanza or a Cirrus or
Mhm.
something like that, because, first of all, they're too fast. They get too far away from the airport by the time they're 1,000 feet. Some Bonanzas, especially if they're heavily loaded, don't climb well at all. And you could easily be at 1,000 feet and be a mile away from the airport.
Mhm.
There's no way that you're going to make it back. But if your entire flight training has consisted of, at 500 feet, I'm going to land straight ahead, but at 1,000 feet, we're going to turn back to the airport. And you've said that over and over and over again in your head for how many times you've taken off, and you keep doing it in a Bonanza, you're just reinforcing some really, really bad stuff that could happen if something happens. So, the FAA is fond of saying nothing happens until something happens. And they're usually talking about in the context of some sort of an investigation or something like that. You've busted a reg, and they don't know about it, nothing happens. They find out about it, nothing happens till something happens, like a crash. And that's when, well, we're over gross or we're out of CG or something. And now everybody's in trouble, including the insurance company not going to pay and all of that kind of stuff. So, you know, the sad fact of all of this, Jamie, is that I believe that there are a lot of pilots out there who who think that they're better than they are in terms of how they're going to handle an emergency.
I'm with
And
you. I'm
and
I'm
and
sorry that I am, but I am.
and I got to tell you, Jamie. I mean, and I'm not. You and I could very well be included in that broad statement. As
Sure.
much as we both pride ourselves, I think I can speak for you in trying to maintain not just legal currency but true proficiency. Today, coming back from a check ride, I was flying to 182, and thinking about our conversation today, I said it's been a while since I've done this, so I'm going to pull the power of being the numbers. I'm going to try to put the airplane down on the third stripe, and by golly, I did it. But there have been other times that I've done the same thing with that airplane and missed it by several hundred feet. So being able to do it once, is that luck or is that skill? I don't know. I didn't have time to go try it again. But I just think that as a group, and I know I'm painting with a broad brush, and I don't intend to offend anybody with this statement, and I hope that folks watching will take it from where it's coming from. But I just think that there are a lot of us collectively that overestimate our skill level when it comes to dealing with an unexpected emergency. And let's face it, if it's an emergency, it's unexpected.
Well, and it stands to reason because for most of us, we get our ticket. We don't do the air work as much as we used to. We do a whole lot of cruising out for $100 hamburger or a vacation or whatever. And
Right.
just as you were talking about that pre-takeoff blurb that we do, we can easily forget that while we've memorized that the airplane can stall at any airspeed and any attitude at any altitude, we haven't had a problem in 500 hours. And then when it happens, we're not on our toes at all because we've gotten lulled into a sense of confidence, overconfidence that this is all going to work out. And the reality is, when you've had your issues, when I've had my issues, it's a huge surprise. And you got to mentally get in that game right now and know what to do, or it's not going to work out. And it's a difficult topic to talk about I'm reflecting as we talk about this on a few crashes that I've been aware of that people I know have been involved with. You know, the biggest thing I can leave folks with on this one, Pat, is please go download the NTSB Final Report on this. We've got a link in the show notes. Please go look at the ASI video about this NTSB Final Report because it's so good, covering what exactly happened and how you could avoid that happening to you. And please go watch that impossible turn video that ASI did a couple of years ago because it is surprising. That's really talented pilots who are fully prepared for it, flying planes they're familiar with. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So just as you're saying, Pat, it is important that you go out and you practice that with the 1,000-foot AGL hard deck. You don't want to try it near the ground and be wrong. You can learn a lot from that. And I'm sorry to
Well,
go off, but
no, I
I
think
miss
it's all.
Richard, and
I
it's just such a tragic accident, and I hope it never happens to anybody ever again. If we help anybody prevent themselves getting into this situation, I feel fulfilled.
I'll leave it as far as my part in this, Jamie. I'll just kind of leave it at this. We've talked about this before on this channel, but if you take any random NTSB accident report that covers the kind of flying that we do, and I'm talking about single engine or multi engines, little airplane general aviation stuff, and factor out pilot incapacitation or catastrophic airframe failure, which, yes, they happen, but they're statistically insignificant.
Mhm.
Factoring those things out, you're left with what we call four cardinal sins, and that's arrogance, ignorance, complacency, and distractions. And I'll say it again: arrogance, ignorance, complacency, and distractions. Look at any random NTSB accident report, and you'll find one or more of those four elements in every single one of them. And and you would think that it's so easy to avoid, but we keep killing ourselves in the same old ways that we've been killing ourselves for since 1903, and we're getting better. But when we kill ourselves, we're doing it the very same way that we've always done it, and I don't know what else to say except like you, I miss Richard.
Well, I'm with you on this entirely. And folks watching, please, the tools you need to be a better, safer pilot are out there. ASI videos, Air Safety Institute videos are free. Just go tag into them and watch it. I've learned so much from those. I learned a lot from Richard. I learned a lot from Pat. So just keep out there looking for new information and keep in mind, it's not a personal insult, but you might not be as good as you think you are. Make a little bit of an effort. The safety really is the big payoff. And we'll see you next time. Thanks.
Adios, my friend.